Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, brought to you by the TLBTV network and broadcast from the studios of Bill Muckler as part of the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm coming to you from my home in studio in Cocoa, Florida, overlooking the Indian River Basin, and right behind me is where Cape Canaveral is, where they launched the big missiles. And today I'm really excited to have a special guest, Jeremy Hanson of Unleashed. And Jeremy, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me on, Bill. You know what? I've been waiting to get on here, and I'm really excited. Thank you for having me.
Oh, great. And for the people who are watching this, and this is going to be broadcast out over a lot of the internet, social media sites and YouTube and so forth. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and give us a little bit of your bio and how you really got started in all this.
Well, I'm 39. I have 11 kids. I love family. I love traditional America. I started out living in Wisconsin, and I've always been a small business owner since I was young. And I got Lyme's disease, Meniere's, and diabetes all at the same time. And it kind of crushed what I was doing. I own a big power washing company, and I wasn't able to do it anymore. And I used to go have coffee, and there was a radio producer in there one day, and he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Well, Jeremy Hanson." And he goes, "You need to be on the radio." And I thought, well, you know what? I'll give it a try. And it's just kind of expanded from there because I wasn't physically able to do what I used to do. And luckily, God blessed me, and he gave me this outlet to do it.
And so now you're living in Missouri, I understand.
Yeah, I'm down here in the Ozarks. I'm loving it. We moved 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. And the reason was my joints were just tearing me up from the Lyme's disease and the cold weather up in Wisconsin. Don't get me wrong. It's been plenty cold here too this year. But the weather was just tearing me up. And we moved down here. My in-laws were down here. And I moved from a very liberal place to a very, very conservative place. And I've always been a conservative. So for me, this move was great.
Oh, fantastic. And I can relate to where you are because I was born in St. Louis, and I went to the University of Missouri. So, and I'm familiar with that area. We had friends down there in southwest Missouri. Used to go down in that area, drive through there and go scuba diving at some of the lakes there in southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. So it's beautiful country. People don't understand, unless they've been there, how really nice the Ozarks are.
It's kind of a hidden gem. Most people don't know how many streams there are here, how many lakes, camping opportunities, hunting. I mean, most people don't know. We have elk. Actually, a little 12-year-old girl went hunting for the first time this year, and she called her dad on the cell phone, and she said, "I hit this great big buck." And the dad got there. He was writing the story, and he said, "She sure did. It was an elk." And not a white.
Yeah, that was a big one, wasn't it?
Oh, it was huge. You know, and there are a lot of things that are different here in Missouri than where I came from in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's kind of a police state. They make a lot of their revenue by writing like speeding tickets and failure to stop at stop signs. And down here, the laws actually dictate that if they write you a ticket, the money can't go to that municipality. So the whole infrastructure of the way government works is actually different down here compared to up there. It's actually really weird.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're conservative, and I've been searching to find my ideology or my label all my life. And I've got a little bit different perspective than most of the people I talk to. You're pretty much the same age as my son. He's 37, going on 38 this year. So I know your generation, but I got interested in this whole thing back when I was 5 years old in 1940, when Wendell Willkie ran against FDR, and I remember the whole big thing about FDR, you know, running for the third term, and that was unconstitutional, and he shouldn't do it. He should step down, and it was all about pretty much power and everything. But as fierce as politics were, people weren't as delusional about this whole thing, and there wasn't this big divide where people had to hate each other. You know, if you're on one side or the other, you had to hate each other. And so I guess I was always kind of a conservative because my father had a small business, but I didn't really understand all that, you know, at that time. But as I grew older, I based pretty much my whole ideology, if you want to say it, on the fact that I believe that the best thing for the American citizen, we the people, is a small government, streamlined government that's limited in power and is close to home. And what we have now is we've got this whole thing has been turned upside down to where instead of we the people being on top, and then our states, and then our federal government, it's the federal government has the states. The states are operated like they're regional departments of the federal government, and we the people are down there in the bottom. And I don't understand why someone, and I'm having a difficult time with this, why someone would think that having a large central government that wants to be a part of the ruling global community is really best for me in Cocoa, Florida, or you in Missouri, or somebody in any town, USA.
I can't agree with you more. I picked the word conservative, first of all, because it best represents my values. But there are certain things that I disagree with the conservatives on. If I could say it, I would just say I'm pro-American. There used to be a time I remember sitting around the coffee table with my great aunts and great uncles, and this one would be a Democrat and this one would be a Republican, and everybody got along because they were Americans first. And, you know, I heard a guy, a Christian, one time. He told me he was Baptist. I said, "Oh, you're Baptist, huh?" He said, "No." He said, "I'm a Christian first." He said, "My convictions are Baptist." And what I like to say is, you know what, I'm an American first, and my convictions are conservative. And I have the same reasons as you do. We need a small government. Our Constitution was based on the fact of having a small government. We don't need government intrusion in American lives. Now, when you say you struggle with the fact that you can't recognize why they would think this would be good for them or good for us, I think it's very simple. Well, I don't care if you're a rhino or a Democrat. When you make $170,000 a year, like Pelosi, I love picking on Pelosi, and you're worth upwards of $180 million, and you're telling Americans that, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 bonus check you're getting is crumbs. Well, then you've lost touch. You don't really understand or know what we're going through. So when it comes to these big issues, they have no clue, nor do they care to know what's good for me and you.
Okay. You're making a lot of sense there, and I agree with that. I guess what I was thinking about was just, you know, people like myself, my neighbors, my family, my friends, why they are so in love with having this large federal government. And when we see the elections, we see about 50% of the people vote one way, 50% of the people vote the other way. And to tell you the truth, I don't think there's just a very small percentage on both sides that really know what they're voting for.
They have no idea what they're voting for. Most of them. Even sometimes I don't even know what I'm voting for, because when they tell us what we're voting for, it doesn't end up actually being what we voted for.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the big problem. The big problem is politics have been used as a distraction to control the people. And through that, our culture has been destroyed. And when they destroyed the culture, and it was both sides, I'm not going to take a partisan line on this. The Democrats have socially done it. The Republicans have fiscally done it, where they destroyed our culture. People have forgot how to be Americans first. They forgot how to be a good man, a good leader. A woman has forgotten how to be a good mother or good in their community. We've forgotten what education is about, how communities stick together, standing shoulder to shoulder. And they've broke us up. They've segregated us by race, by, well, he made $1 million, so that guy's no good anymore. Any way they can divide us, they have. And now we're left with people fighting over this political ideology that really doesn't mean a damn thing.
No, I agree, because if we go back to the founding fathers, and now we're supposed to hate the founding fathers because they were rich white guys who were white supremacists, and they owned slaves and they hated people of color. I never did buy into that, because that was the culture back then. But, like Thomas Jefferson, who was, Tom was a pretty bright guy, and he came up with a lot of great ideas and helped us found this, republic that we have, this constitutional republic. He was considered a classical liberal. What's happened is now the left has commandeered the name liberal, which really doesn't mean that. And conservatives now, the Republicans have commandeered the word conservative, which really doesn't mean that either. And that's why I say I kind of struggle with how to label myself, because people say, well, what are you? And I say, I'm we the people. and they say, yeah, but, the chicken has to cross the road. He'll get run down if he's in the middle of the road. Can't you make up your mind, what side you're on? And I said, yeah, I make up my idea, which is really the same as you, pro-American, we the people.
Right. I think you got to be that way, especially if you're a traditionalist, and I'm a traditionalist. And I want to touch on something that you said there, how we're supposed to hate our founding fathers. They were all brilliant men. Some of them agreed with slavery, some did not, but the culture and society on a global level was what they shared in common with the rest of the world at that point. A lot of people don't understand it, and the left loves using the battering ram of, oh, you had slaves. But what they don't like talking about is up until 1650, the slaves of the day were of European descent. As a matter of fact, the word slave comes from the word Slav, from the European Slavic nations. And in 1650, there were more European slaves in Africa than there were African slaves around the world. So it's a relatively, speaking in the scope of time, it's a relatively new idea that these African Slavs or slaves are the slave of choice. So when we came over here, this is the other misnomer that they say that we just killed all the Indians, that they didn't, that we just took everything from them. The truth is that the facts dictate that the tribes were committing genocide against the other tribes for centuries before we came here. So for them to say that we stole their land, I do believe that it was done by conquest. We did it the way that everybody else was doing it at the time. And remember, we need to judge men in the time that they lived. Mm-hmm. And so I don't have any reservations about how we got this country. I don't think that we're racist like they say they are. I completely don't believe in institutional racism, except for the Democrat Party oppressing certain minority groups by putting them in their deep city plantations. That's what I think.
You hit the nail on the head there. And really that's what's happened is we're becoming a socialist nation, and so in doing so, we're relying on the central government, and the central government now has commandeered the African Americans, and I even hate to use the word African Americans because I just think of them as Americans, but they've taken a significant, a portion of the population, about 15% of the black population. That's a population in America roughly, and they put them in these housing projects. And I can go back to when I really first started seeing this was after I got out of the Marine Corps. By the way, when I was in the Marine Corps, I had a top secret security clearance, so I kind of understand what's going on with all this stuff, you know, and how anybody can say they don't understand security clearances. That's pretty bizarre, you know. That's unbelievable. But anyway, with JFK and LBJ, specifically Johnson as president, that's when they started building these housing projects and putting people in projects. And I looked at that and I thought, what they're doing is they're enslaving these people, because back when I was very young, my father had this typesetting business. He had a client that he worked for, was the St. Louis American newspaper. It was a black newspaper. It was a weekly newspaper. And the black people were all entrepreneurs, and they were really solid citizens. And then what happened is in the 60s with Kennedy and Johnson, they started taking this away from them. So now when they put all the minority people on welfare and Section 8 housing and EBT cards, and you know, they made slaves out of them, because now they're not entrepreneurs anymore. They're not doing the things they were really great at. And my heart goes out to them, because here they are, you know. Now what can you really, how can you feel good about yourself if you're waiting for the government to give you a check or housing or, you know, benefits every month?
Exactly. You know, there's a lot of cloudy, dirty stuff surrounding this. And I'll give you a good example of the question you asked earlier that has everything to do with HUD. But what I see, I've got a lot of friends that are minorities of every color. I don't see them complaining about who they are. I know they're chasing after their dreams just like I am. And every single American wants to do well for their children. And we can't unify around that, because we have this division that is perpetrated on us by these political institutions on both sides. I get sick of it. I'll give you an example. When Donald Trump was running for president, one of the big stories is that he was racist, because him and his father got sued back in the 70s because they weren't renting to minorities in certain communities. And they went to court and they lost, okay? Now, here's the truth behind that. This is where politics gets so dirty. When Donald Trump's father got the loan from HUD through the federal government, okay, he had to work with the city inspectors and the city HUD workers. Now, in order for them to guarantee their loan, he had to follow their rules. The rules stated that if we give you money to build a place here, you can only rent to this minority group. If we give you money for over here, you can only rent to this minority group. Now, if he would have rented to, let's say, whatever color here, the opposite of whatever they said, or over here, he would have defaulted on the loan and they would have came after him. Now, that part just, you know, he was set up as a pariah, okay? The Democrats, you know New York, everybody knows New York. Who has New York been run by for 70 years? Well, they wanted to hide that. So they sued the Trumps, made a pariah out of him, even though he was following the guidelines of the political establishment. That set the course for him to be called racist. Well, if you know the facts, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah. And what's happening now is the left has decided that the best way to demonize the right is to call them racist or xenophobes or Islamophobes or something like that. So it's all about name calling. And to me, what that's all for is to rev the base up so they can get more donations. And the more donations they get, the more power they get, the more they can win elections and stay in power. And I don't know about you, but I get stuff from people all the time. And I mean, sending me things. And for some reason, I've gotten on all these mailing lists where the goats are sending me, requests for donations. Now, if you've read my articles, I don't call them Democrats or liberals or leftists or anything. I just call them goats because they're the goofy Obama adoration team people, and that's what it's really all about. They still adore Obama. If Obama could have been in a third term, they would be giddy. They would be gleeful today. But with Trump being in, they can't do it. So the goats are all about how much money can I get. In the meantime, I'm getting all these requests for donations from all these various rhino organizations, and I spell rhinos with an H. The rhinos are not Republicans in name only. They're really hypocritical, incompetent, nettlesome organization is what they are.
Amen. That is so true. I love reading your articles. They really make you think. You know, some articles get information from, but you have this weird sort of common sense that make you think about the issue that you're writing about. That's why I love reading your book and your articles. I can't wait for your new book to come out. You know, when it comes to Obama, okay, I didn't dislike him because he was half black. He was also half Irish. I disliked him because he went against the core values of American traditions. We're now watching where we see these FBI, Department of Justice, NSA, how they were being corrupted from within. And whether he was directly part of that or he allowed it to happen, the truth is he knew about it. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, now we find out that he actually had all these memos from different people about things under lock and key at the White House, and he had the security clearance made so it couldn't leave the White House. So when the transition team came in and they couldn't figure out where all these leaks were coming from, it was because it was already hidden away. Nobody knew about it. It is what it is. But when we to your original thing, culture and why these people are at each other's throats, I honestly believe that it's just confusion and misdirection purposely by the media. An example, they say that Donald Trump hasn't done anything for the minority community. Well, when Barack Obama was in office, he gave $6 billion to the HBCU, the historically black colored universities. When Donald Trump came in, he said, no. We need to raise that because these people have dreams. These people want to reach the best level they can with their lives. So he gave $28 billion to the HBCU. How many times have you heard about that, Bill?
This is the first time, to tell you the truth. This is one that slipped by me. And right. What's happening is, and we call them the mainstream media. I call them the shady stream media because there are really some pretty shady characters involved in that. They're not going to tell us the truth, and they're not going to report on anything that's positive. I've seen these surveys that, like 90+% of their coverage is anti-Trump or Republican. And so that's what the majority of the people are looking at, and they're thinking, well, it must be true. But now, since Trump, we're finding out it's really there's a lot of fake news out there.
There's a lot of fake news out there, and there's attacking news where they are specifically spinning a directive for us to follow because they have to protect their agenda. And that's the problem. That's why before we got on here today, we were talking about our family members. I have an aunt that deleted me off of Facebook, won't talk to me if I show up at Christmas because I am a conservative, because she believes in the old Democrats. Remember when Democrats were good? They actually stood for the American people. Well, she still believes that that's where they're at. My thing is I don't care what party. I look at the party system like it's evil. And I think some people are starting to come around to that idea. At some point, we got to stop focusing on politics, because I remember a time when you were focused on if you were going camping that weekend, if you were going to go throw the Frisbee, if you were going to the beach. You were doing American things, and that's what your mind was on. now we have this political real-time show on 24 hours a day where everybody wants to know the next thing, who's going to stab the next person in the back. And it doesn't even allow us to be family anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no question about that. Let's change the subject a little bit. I'm watching you, and I see in the background you have. I listened to your radio show, which is, I guess, a TV show, but we never saw you. We just saw an image of you. And now this past week, and that's why I really wanted to have you on, is now we actually get to see you with your background. And so you have a studio, and it looks like, and I actually, let me see if I can get this on here. I got this off of your Facebook page, I think it is. So it shows a little bit more of it. And so you got the lighting and everything, and my lighting's all screwed up. My head sometimes look like it's coming off when I'm on here. But tell us a little bit about your studio and what you had to do to put all that together, because I think people are interested. You know, how did all these things happen and how do they work?
How they work, I'm not the biggest techie guy out there, but I've got 2 soundboards. I've got Zoom H6 mixer. I've got 3 computers. I've got some studio monitors. I've got 5 lights. I've got some different amplifiers running around here. And I got to thank my family, first of all, because they allowed me to do this and sink some money into this. And then second of all, I got to thank Terry over at Liberty One, because he's like, hey, we got to do this. What's slowing you down? And I told him, and he called me back, and he's like, by the way, that's ready to be picked up. And I'm like, what's ready to be picked up? Well, the stuff you needed. And so I just had to go pick it up at Best Buy, because he just went and got it. He's like, we need to get this train rolling. So, like I said, I'm not the most techie guy in the world. As you can notice, I'm not always looking in the camera. I'm looking at you on one computer. I've got information on another computer, running my sound over here. But I love what I do, and I can physically do it, which I'll tell you what, when you're a young guy, you have a large family. And I used to be a welder, and I used to have my own businesses. That's all I ever did. And when that gets taken away from you and you physically can't do it, I feel very, very blessed that I'm able to do this instead of some people that have no other options. So, you know, that's kind of my studio.
Okay. And for anybody who hasn't watched Jeremy's show, it's called Unleashed. And also, you're on at 5. I see you at 5 o'clock Eastern time. You're on 4 o'clock Central, and I guess on down the line. And right. People can see you on Liberty One. Tell us a little bit about Liberty One, because I'm kind of curious about that, and I'm seeing more and more of it every day.
Liberty One, it's such a blessing. Terry Littlepage is the guy that owns Liberty One. And he wanted to put together a blue-collar mix of regular guys that talk truth. It really didn't matter to him if they were Republican, Democrat. He just wanted people that talked the truth and that understood the struggles of regular people. So, you know, he's got me on there. He's got Jim Lockwood on there. He's got Eric Thompson, Joe Biggs, Jermaine Bozzio, Rusty Humphreys. There's a lot of different guys. I believe we're up to 11 shows now. And they also have a news site, true news site, libertyonenews.com. And it's a group of people that are really trying to help out the American people. We're not really trying to help out a political party or anything like that. This directive that he's giving us is completely different. We're doing some documentary films, like Getting Back to Being American. From what I hear, you might be a writer on there, as well as have your show on Liberty One on the weekends. I'm really looking forward to that. But there's a lot of really good people on there, and that in this business is very, very hard to find.
Yeah, I know. For example, I really like Jim Lockwood, and actually you're the one who introduced me to the Jim Lockwood show, so I've had an opportunity to watch him. And every day, instead of watching TV, which I really should do a lot less of. I'm usually on my computer and I'm writing, and I can watch Jim Lockwood on. He's been off for the month, but I think he's going to be starting on next week, and the week that this show will be published. So looking forward to that. And the lineup of hosts that you gave, really some fantastic people.
Yeah, they're really good guys, genuinely, and that's something different. Like I've been on Red State Talk Radio. I'm still on Talk America Radio. I'm on some terrestrial stations, but I'll tell you what, I really, really get a kick out of working with Terry and Joe and these other guys, because we all have the same common goal, and that's to bring America back. I mean, like you said, Bill, it's so important for us to get back to our roots, where we're loving each other for just being American. If we're ever going to prosper again, I don't care how much money we're making. It comes from the heart. And we see these guys on that group on Liberty One TV network working really, really hard to try to bring that back into people's lives.
Yeah. One of the things that I wrote about in my book, I think it's chapter 18, when I wrote about political correctness, which I'm just so much against this political correctness stuff. We go to church together, and we sit with people. We don't know who they are. We don't know if they're left or right or conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, libertarian, and we all seem to be okay. And we go to a ball game, if you go to a baseball game or whatever, you don't know who you're with, and you start talking with somebody, you don't know who they are. So this whole thing of having us being defined by our ideology is really, to me, hurting America. And this whole PC thing really started back in, I think it was 1848, when Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. And that was the whole idea of it, is to get people, take free speech away from people and get them so they would, you weren't allowed to say what you thought you wanted to say.
Right. No more truth. I mean, it is what it is. Like, the big thing now is chain migration. And I had a bunch of liberals on my page the other day, and they were saying that Donald Trump was racist because he used chain migration. So I went through and I found Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Susan Rice, a bunch of them. And I put this little thing together and I put it on. I said, is it racist when they said it? And obviously nobody said it. But the truth is, we've been lying to ourselves because everybody's been afraid of being labeled. Well, that's what whether you're a rhino or whether you're a leftist, you label people now. That's what it is today. So, I mean, trust me, Bill, I've got plenty of labels from different sides. I mean, some people call me the American original. Some people call me a liar, and a lot worse. But I always try to vet everything that I say, and I try to be factual based. But it is what it is. That's the climate that we live in today. Everybody wants something for nothing. And if they're not going to get it, then they're going to tear you down and take something from you. And that's the PC culture. That is, you're going to do what I say, and if not, I'm going to demonize you in a way until it does get done.
Well, I can tell everybody that's watching today what Jeremy and I both want is we want us to all be we the people again. We want us to all be citizens who are working together. We want people to be safe. We want them to be prosperous. And we want them to be able to have a good family life. And I think, to follow the religion of our choice and to be able to not be labeled. So that's really what we want, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every American has dreams, and I've fought with people about this. They say, "Oh, you're a white nationalist." Well, I'm not a white nationalist. I'm a nationalist. You see, I believe that every American can be exceptional. I believe every American has hopes and dreams, and every American can overachieve anything they want. But for some reason, the political establishments have interjected themselves into our lives. Like you said, we've been to ball games before and didn't know who was sitting next to us. I mean, it could have been a Christian, could have been a Muslim, could have been anything. We don't know. but we were sitting there enjoying something together. And we've gotten away from that, you know, like, oh, I don't want to walk in there. That's a Trump supporter. This is a true story. I actually belong to a group on Facebook where it's about home recording and studio, something completely non-political. And I took a picture of my studio and I didn't take down my Trump sign. There was 300 people that commented and started a war in there just because I had a picture of my studio with the Trump sign. It's just asinine to me to think that that's going to continue on in America forever.
Well, I'm thinking that maybe forever we could be on here forever, but eventually we're going to have to say goodbye to our viewers. So what I want to do is tell everybody that we really appreciate you watching us today. And so, boys and girls, thank you very much. And remember, God bless America and God save our America, because we need you now more than ever before.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, boys and girls, I'm back for just a moment. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Jeremy Hanson of Unleashed, and hope you watch his show. It's Liberty One. And what I'd like to do, of course, is talk to you about, and I don't even have, I used to always have to show my book, but now I got this thing, whatever it is, like it is, I guess some people call it a background or a green screen. I'm giving you all the inside dope on this. I have no idea how any of this works, and I know my head looks like I'm blowing my top or whatever, because I don't know how to get the lighting right. But anyway, with this article, there'll be all the information you need to do to find Jeremy and follow him. And also for me, read the 2020 book and read the articles that we publish on our webpage, www.2020americabook.com. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter. I'm actually on a new site called the Liberty Vine, and I have the American Vision is one of the news groups on there, and we're one of the top popular groups on there, along with Breitbart and Fox and some of the other Fox News, some of the others. So, and then there's another one called Pro America Only. I'm on that, and I'm the only news group on that one. It's a fledgling one. Those two groups I just mentioned are for pretty much people who are interested in free speech. And as you know, when I go on Facebook, Facebook rejects almost all of my articles and my shows because they say they're spam. So anything I have on there that has anything to do with patriotism or honoring our vets or anything like that is flagged immediately by Facebook as spam, and Twitter pretty much to some degree also. So anyway, follow the people who are interested in free speech and the Constitution, and guys like Jeremy Hanson. And my next guest on, I hope to have Jim Lockwood from the Jim Lockwood Show. So here again, boys and girls, goodbye, and God bless America. God bless you all for watching.